Today we're going to be checking out the new Monsters card from the Tide Rises expansion. It's been a while since we made a video. I'm sorry about that. I was busy with some real life stuff. I wanted to do this the other day, but I also wanted to wait until they were up on the official website because I don't like scrolling through Reddit to see all the other spoilers for patch notes and stuff. I just like looking at the cards, get a first impression type of thing instead of just read everyone else's comments. So we haven't seen any of the cards yet. And let's go see what we have. TUGO the Elder. 9 provisions, 11, backwards, 9 power, 11 provisions. So that's pretty big. Ogroid. I'm guessing the Ogroids are the new, or going to be most of this thing, which is interesting. They haven't had too much love on their own. I think they're mentioned as a synergy in Selective Mutation, but I think that's about it. Interesting to see what they do here. They do get 6 new cards. I'm guessing they're probably all going to go with the Ogroids then. At the end of your turn, boost the lowest power unit control by 1, so it's a 1 point a turn engine. That's pretty good. Well, pretty consistent at least. They'll make him a 10 if he's the only thing on his row. Might. Boost all lowest power units by 1 instead. Okay, so that's interesting. Might is... I believe I do know the keywords. Someone told me the new keywords. So might is if you have a 10 power unit in each of your rows. So if your melee row is a 10 power and your ranged row is a 10 power or higher. So if we have that, he should meet that most likely on his own once he plays into a row. You put him into a row. If he's the lowest, he'll boost himself by 1. Then again, he might not be your lowest unit because he is a 9. But getting him up by 1 point to 10 would trigger this in one of your rows. You see the 10 power one in the other row. And then you have the might effect, boost all lowest power units control instead. So if you have a bunch of spawning, so you got 2 Ogroids, and then you spawn like an Arachis Swarm, and you get 4 drones and boost all the drones. That's interesting. It does require a bit of building around, but it's worth noting that your lowest power unit will eventually tie some other units to be your lowest power, right? So say you have like a 4, a 5, and a 6. The 4 go up to a 5, then you've got 2 lowest power units at 5, they'll go up to 6, then you have 3 lowest power units being 6, they'll go up to 7, and you can get a bunch of points. It will take a while to do that unless you're playing specific setup, but he has good tempo just coming down on his own. It's very interesting. Just a note on the might keyword. I find it very interesting how the might keyword is 10 because it kind of plays a lot away from relics because you get Gancans are 9s. I guess Ratcatcheress and She Who Knows are 10s, but there's also Griffin's only a 9, so it'll be interesting to see what we want to play with this. But it does seem potentially pretty good. We'll see how good the other Ogroids are and how easy it is to get that might trigger. Maybe there'll be other ones that go up to 10 very easily, or just play for 10, like old Spirit Tip kind of does. And this seems interesting. I'm sure there'll be more synergies with it, and I'm curious to see if you end up playing to spawn a bunch of tokens with this, or if you just let it boost your low cards up and get value that way. I'm very curious to see how this gets played out. Next up we have King. Oh, you guys know how my pronunciation is. CHRUM. CHRUM? Go with that. 1 for 14. We've seen this stat line before in Yaga, I believe, although Yaga got buffed. And even a similar pose to Yaga, sitting on the throne. So anyway, 14 provisions, 1 power, Ogroid Warrior. The other one was a Druid, right? Yeah, Druid. It's kind of interesting. Deploy Might. So deploy Might, gain Resilience. Well, Resilience is the best keyword in the game. So that's pretty good. And then the base power of this card is equal to the number of Ogroids in your starting deck. Okay, so say we have 10 Ogroids. He's a 10 power Resilience. That's good, but he has 14 provisions. She Who Knows is essentially a 10 power Resilience most of the time. And she's a 13 provision. And she does play at 10 without needing the Ogroids in your deck. However, in Ciri Nova is an 8 provision if you meet the deck conditions with Resilience. However, if we have like 14 or 15 Ogroids in our deck, we're talking about 15 with Resilience. That is massive. It's also worth knowing, though, you need the might for the Resilience. You're never going to play this with less than 10, I would guess, because it makes the Ogroid, like, it just helps the might trigger if this guy's at 10. And you can put it in whichever row doesn't already have a 10 in it. That's interesting. We'll have to see the other cards to how many Ogroids you can get in your deck. But you go with Ice Troll, Ice Giant, Jotun, I'll have to count them later, but I think there's enough to make this really big and a really, really scary card. That being said, Might definitely plays into tall removal, which is pretty common in a lot of decks. And heat waving this, you probably feel pretty good about it. I'm guessing that's going to happen quite a bit. You can always Pelor off a Resilience, so that's something else to note. There's ways to deal with Resilience. So this card is potentially extremely scary, and you can always play it as a finisher if it's really big. You don't want the Resilience, although I'm pretty sure you want the Resilience. This seems potentially quite good. It depends how well the rest of the Ogroids work together and how much Tall Plenish goes around. Very curious about that one. It is a deploy, though, so keep that in mind. You have to have the other Might card set up, and if your opponent just like pings your 10 power card, just say you're playing 10 power cards and they ping them down to 9, you don't have the Resilience anymore because it's not base power, it's power. So Frost might actually be very annoying to go up against with Ogroids. If that Frost is always hitting down your tall guys, you might be boosting them or something, who knows, but I'm very curious. This is definitely going to be very strong. The question is this deck going to be good enough for this? Next up, we have Lord Riptide, another Ogroid warrior. 10 power for 8 provisions, already nice. That's a pretty good stat line right there. Deploy melee clash with the highest power enemy unit. So, if we look at the other clash cards, you will have what? Croc. You have Bjorn. There's another one, I think, but I can't remember it right now. But they're usually about 6 power. Like Croc is 7, but you play stuff next to him, so that one's kind of debatable. And then you've got Bjorn, which is usually like 4, 5, 6, 7, depending on veterans and such. King Bran and whatever. But clashing with 10 will make opening with a good engine card extremely risky, right? Just use Alumni, for example. If they play Leticia, and they're playing Ogroid, they have access to this and just kill it. So that's potentially very scary. However, it is the highest power unit only. And there's situations that might not be good, say going against a Mutant Generator deck or a Knight deck and they have Immortals out. You don't want to clash with Immortals, obviously. So, highest power restricts it a little bit, but it's still going to be quite good. Oh, we didn't even use Might effect yet. And then Might at the end of your turn while in hand gain 2 armor. So obviously what you want to do is wait till this guy gets armor, clash for the free damage, and it just plays for 10 with removal. That's extremely good. Having 10 means you trigger that Might. It's also a 10, so if you get enough armor, this doesn't damage itself. It helps set up your Might. That's quite good. And then, yeah, just if you get enough armor on this guy, it's just a free removal. I think this is going to be an extremely good card. I would even wonder, decks like Renfrey don't have a lot of control, and Monsters in general doesn't have a lot of control. This might just see play in like Renfrey Monsters decks, just because it's a control card, more or less. Although the Clash is non-targeted. This 8 provision is just like Toad Prince, so I'm curious if they'll compete, or if the not targeting the card with Riptide really makes it so you just prefer something like Toad Prince. Though he can only target 4 lowers anyway, so I'm curious about that in particular. But yeah, this seems like a very strong card. Next, we have the Girdle of Giant Strength. Anyone played Heroescape? This is a very, very random question. It reminds me a lot of Belt of Giant Strength, one of the temporary glyphs from the Dungeons and Dragons expansions they started doing. But anyway, that's a completely irrelevant anecdote. So it reminds me of that quite a bit. So I'm guessing it'll boost the power. So Girdle of Giant Strength, boost an allied unit by 10. No surprise there. Might, when you play an Ogroid, play Self from your graveyard and gain Doomed. Okay, so it's potentially playing for 20. That's pretty good. And boosting by 10, you're going to get very, very tall. Right, so you play like an Ogroid. Say your Ogroid's like a 6. So it's like Ice Giant. What's Ice Giant? Like a 7 for 5? It's 7. And then I think he's a Ogroid. And then you boost him by 10. That's 17. That's worth quite a bit. And then you play your next Ogroid. This plays from the graveyard, and that one goes up by 10 too. So 20 points. It will make you extremely tall. But potentially as both units, you need to trigger Might. However, once again, you need the Might for the second effect. So you're definitely going to be playing cards. I'm guessing maybe the bronzes will do something, help you get to 10 more easily or something. But as it stands here, it looks like getting the might not be as easy as we would want. But we'll see. You can always boost your units too. But this seems potentially really good. This would be an insane carryover from round 2 to 3, though. If you can get the might in round 3, let's say like you round 2, you play this, go to round 3, and then you go like Morwood, he's like an 18, so that triggers your might, and then you just play another 10, and you get this plus 10 if you're in a graveyard. That could be quite interesting. We'll see what we think about this one as I mess up the zooming. But yeah, this one seems very interesting. I think we just see what the other monsters cards do, though. Then we have the Ogre Warrior. So this is a 6 for 6 Ogroid Warrior. Deploy boost self by 2 for each allied unit with 10 or more power. So this is a might payoff. Suppose you've got 10 guys with 10 power. This is a 16 for 6. No, 26 for 6, because it's 2 for each one. That would be absolutely insane. But even if you just have 3, 2's a 10 for 6. That's not terrible. That's not bad, yeah. And then if we have 3 of them, it's a 12 for 6, which is very, very good. The question is, how easy is it going to be to get a whole bunch of your guys to 10 power? Because 10 power is actually quite a lot. This does seem good, though. Like, even if you're just playing a deck with big finishers, you're just playing Belt of Giant Strength, the one we just saw. Like, you play a guy, you play Belt of Giant Strength, you play one of the other ones, like Lord Riptide with the armor, and this guy's already playing for 10 for 10. Potentially quite interesting. And again, if there's so many changes to these Ogroids here, well, if there's so many new Ogroids, I'm guessing there's going to be changes to the other ones in the game. They tend to do that whenever they release patches with a bunch of cards from one archetype. So I'm guessing there'll be patches to the other Ogroids too. And I'm curious to see what exactly they will do. But this seems potentially very, very good. And I'm sure we'll see this one. Any Ogroid deck's probably going to want to make a bunch of 10s. Question is, how easy will that to be to make enough for this to pay off? I'm not too sure. It could be interesting. You can always do stuff like play a bunch of guys and boost them all too. So you can find ways to do that. Obviously, the first card we looked at, TUGO the Elder, if you can get his might going, they'll keep boosting everyone up to 10. I think this is like the dream situation, right? You get TUGO the Elder, you start boosting your guys with the might trigger as soon as possible. He boosts all your guys up to 10, and then you drop Ogre Warrior with like 8, 9, 10 guys, and it's ridiculous. I think that's the ideal situation. How often that will happen, not too sure about. One other thing to mention with these guys with the might, I've been talking about how it might be hard to set up might. I think it's going to be really important for King CHRUM here, because that resilience means you have half your might setup done already in the next round. So that's something to keep in mind. If he lives, not only is like an insane resilience card, it's really good setup for them. So I think this is something you really want to deal with. But yeah, I can see Ogre Warrior playing for an insane amount. I'm curious to see just how big we can get this guy at some point. Then we have the Cyclops Warrior. Goliath is an Ogroid, we should mention. He's a 10, right? 10 for 7. He'd be a good include, because he's already at 10. So that's a good one to point out here. And I think Old Spear Tip's Ogroid too. So that's another one. So there are cards existing to help set them up. Just talking about how many of these new ones are. It's going to be interesting. I'm definitely going to try it out. Anyway, Cyclops Warrior. 4 for 4. Okay. Ogroid Warrior. Timer 5. That is a long timer. Deploy. Reduce timer by 1 for each Ogroid in your hand. So this is a 10 for 10. Or 10 for 4 on deploy. I'm pretty sure this is going to be a 10 for 4 on deploy, just in most games. Which is insane. Like, absolutely insane. This is the setup card. You just play this, and you get your full setup. A short round 3, this won't trigger the timer. And the thing is, you only need to have 4 Ogroids, right? Because it's timer 5, but at the end of your turn, the timer goes down by 1 anyway. So as long as you have 4 other Ogroids, this guy will trigger. And you're playing an Ogroid deck, you're going to be stacking up a whole bunch of them just for King CHRUM anyway, which means there's almost no way this won't trigger right away. 10 for 4, point slam, deploy. Basically on deploy. That's really, really good. This is potentially one of the best 4-person cards in the game. But there are restrictions before we go too crazy, right? The timer 5 means in a short round, not going to trigger. Like, say you're in like a 4 or 5 card round. Well, maybe not 5 card rounds. Like you're in a 4 card round. You've got like Cyclops Warrior, a Heat Wave, a Peller, like another Ogroid. He's not going to trigger. So then he becomes only a 4 for 4. But then again, if you're in like a 3 card round and all 3 cards in your hand are Ogroids, you play him. Timer goes down from 5 to 3, and your turn goes from 3 to 2, and it'll trigger by the time you play all your cards. So this is a very, very powerful 4-pushing card, and a really good setup for other cards. This card seems insane. Just insane for the Ogroid deck. The question is, how much does the Ogroid deck really need to help? And I think this is a very key card to it. Yeah, this card's really big on deploy. So we've got this Cyclops Warrior. We got 2 of these. We got the Ogre Warriors. Also worth mentioning, this guy really helps setting up that might. And then we've got Giant Strength. We've got Lord Riptide. CHRUM. This looks like a very interesting deck we could be making. We'll be back in a second. We just want to check on the other Ogroids to make sure I don't miss any. So these are all the Ogroids in the game here. If we take a look. We've got Old Spear Tip, really helpful, I think, just to get you that might, but he might not be worth it for the provisions compared to the new cards. Cave Troll's an Ogroid, but he's a 7 with Defender. Might want to be playing him to protect your King CHRUM or something, but I'm just thinking which ones get to 10 easily. Where's Goliath? We mentioned him. Can't play, well, you can play Goliath, yeah, 10 for 7. I think this is a really good include, but then they'll probably try and kill him and then mess you up. Another use case for TUGO Broombreaker now, though. He is the duo faction with Syndicate. So that is interesting. He could be quite good, because normally you don't bother playing him. He's 11 power, he does 3 damage to your own guys. That usually hinders him. But, unless you're going to play Penitent, which most people don't anymore. But if he comes down and just gives you that might trigger for being an 11, might be worth including. Gold Spear Tip. I didn't even know Fuka was an Ogroid, I'll be honest here. But that's an interesting one, because you've thrived too. If everyone else is big, this can get up to a large number very quickly. Then there's Ice Giant, Ice Troll. No one plays Ice Troll, though. Cyclops. I think we skipped Jotun, too. Like, Jotun's one you could use, but I don't think he goes well here. Cyclops destroys an adjacent unit. Like, this is another control card you could play. This deck might actually have decent control. It is the only way to kill Bridge Troll, I think, would be to have Cyclops. So I'm not sure that combo is worth running, but it is a combo you could go for, right? Destroy this, boost your lowest power guy by 4. That's interesting as well. Necker Warrior is an Ogroid Warrior. Oh, the Neckers are Ogroids. Necker Warrior is interesting too, then. But yeah, there's plenty of Ogroids here, and we just over She-Troll, but I don't think that's going to be relevant to this deck. But yeah, there's quite a few Ogroids. Like, some of these you probably want to include, like Goliath, I would imagine, maybe Pugo. Fuka might actually see play, because if you're playing a whole bunch of cards to get to that might trigger, the problem with Fuka is, like, its Thrive triggers. Thrive 2 is really, really good. It starts at a 4, so you can't trigger it very often normally. But if everything you're playing is like 10 or higher, this goes up to 10 or higher, I think this is actually good then. But yeah, so that's all of the Ogroids, and with the new cards, seems extremely interesting. Like, a really big point slam deck's what they're going for, which obviously has vulnerabilities to, like, removal, but also extremely good against things like hyper control with bombs, tactics, that type of stuff, where they just spam out control cards on you and shut down your engines. So it'll be good against that. Again, GIRDLE, very weak to Graveyard Punish, though. If you're playing this for plus 10 on a 12-person card, you don't want that. You definitely want the second one. But overall, it seems like a pretty solid lineup, and some pretty interesting cards. Definitely want to see how these turn out. But anyway, guys, that'll be it for this one, and we'll see you next time. Let me know what all of you think of the new cards. That'll be it for this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. And you can check out some more videos over here. And thanks for watching.